I've been speaking about the three great musts of faith, three things that must go together with faith. First, faith must be confessed. Second, faith must act. Third, faith must be tested. I dealt with the first must. Faith must be confessed. I'm going to deal with the second must. Faith must act. I'm going to explain the connection between faith and works. Now, works is one of those words that's used with a rather special meaning in the New Testament, and we need to just pause for a moment and see what it means. When the word works, or in some translations, deeds, is related to faith, it means the appropriate actions that go together with the faith that we profess. So you could say that works or deeds means the actions which are appropriate to the faith that we confess. Keeping this in mind, let's look at what Paul says in Galatians chapter 5, verse 6. He makes a very simple but very profound statement that all of us need always to bear in mind. For in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision means anything, but faith working through love. I see four successive points there in what Paul is saying. First of all, no external ritual by itself can ever commend us to God. If it's merely something external, it doesn't matter what the ritual is. The example that Paul chooses is circumcision. But no external ritual, unless it's accompanied by faith in the heart, can commend us to God. Secondly, God's primary requirement in the Christian life is faith in the heart. That's the basis and the source of everything in the Christian life. Thirdly, and it's very simple, faith works. True faith inspired by God is active. It's not passive. It doesn't just make statements and leave it at that. It makes statements and follows them up with appropriate actions, with works. And fourthly, and again, this is vitally important, faith works by love. True faith is always expressed in a way that is loving and kind and gracious. So much religion is harsh and critical and unkind. Wherever you encounter religion of that kind, be sure that it does not spring from biblical faith, for faith works by love. Now, James deals more fully with the relationship between faith and works in his epistle, chapter 2, verses 14 through 26. And I'm going to work through these verses with you and see what it is that James is saying here about the connection between faith and works. I'm going to divide this passage of 13 verses up into 6 sections. The first section is verses 14 through 17, and I call it Confession Without Action. And James shows that it's worthless. What use is it, my brethren, if a man says he has faith, but he has no works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is without clothing and in need of daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warmed and filled," and yet you do not give them what is necessary for their body, what use is that? Even so, faith, if it has no works, is dead, being by itself. I would say that James is pointing out there the uselessness of empty religious platitudes. There's a fellow believer who's in need. He needs clothing and food. And one believer says to him, "Go in peace, be warmed and filled." But he doesn't stretch out a hand to give him food or clothing. James says that kind of faith is dead. It's not the kind of faith that comes from God. A living faith is expressed by what it does. The second section is just one verse, verse 18. I call this theology versus life. James says, "But someone may well say, 'You have faith, and I have works. Show me your faith without the works, and I will show you my faith by my works.'" I want to tell you that I always accept that as a personal challenge. I don't want to have a faith that only has to be explained in doctrinal language. If the only way I can communicate my faith is by using doctrinal language and religious speech, it would probably be better if I didn't communicate it at all. There's the challenge. Someone says to you as a believer, well, you have faith without the works, but I'll show you my faith by my works. I'll show you my faith by what I do. I'll show you my faith by the results it produces. Are you in a position to say that to the people that you live with? I'll show you what I believe by the way I live, by the results my faith produces. The third section again is just one verse, verse 19, and I call this the devil's orthodoxy. You believe that God is one. You do well. The demons also believe and shudder. There's a person who's very orthodox in his view of God. He's quite convinced that there's only one true God, and he asserts this creed of his. James says it's a good creed, but it doesn't prove you're right with God. The devil's very orthodox in that respect. He knows there's only one God, and his demons know it. But they're afraid of God. They tremble every time they think of God. Why? Because although they believe, they don't obey. So the lesson there is that true faith in God will lead you to obey God, and faith without obedience is self-deception.